Hello, welcome back to my channel, and right now we are starting the complete history of Thomas the Tank Engine. This year is the 80th anniversary of the very first book of the Railway series, and for honour of this franchise I want to cover the series' most iconic character and my childhood idol. I'm excited. Everyone, I present this engine who doesn't need an introduction. It's time I show you the complete history of Thomas the Tank Engine. Let's begin. Thomas's origins date back to a wooden toy that Reverend Wilbur Awdry made in 1942 for his son Christopher Awdry, who was 2 at the time. The design of the toy was crafted after a Class J50, and Wilbur stated that 1 is the easiest number, I certainly couldn't manage the 2, and the NW stands for nowhere, as this was a made-up engine, doesn't belong to any railway, and Christopher loved the toy and christened it with the name Thomas. After the hit of the first book of the Railway series, called The 3 Railway Engines, made from 1945, Wilbur was encouraged to do another book, as the characters of the book were all based on what he made up for his own stories for Christopher. The focus of the next book was perfect for him, because it's all about Christopher's favourite toy. Wilbert's sketches of Thomas imaged the toy, the long slanted side tanks and everything. He donated these sketches to a new illustrator for the books called Reginald Payne. But Payne had some creative freedom with Thomas's design. As Payne lived in southern England, he decided to form Thomas's appearance on an E2 class, an engine of the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. At first, Wilbur was annoyed with this change. When he found out Payne used a reference from the E2 class, he was pleased with it and allowed it. Thomas's signature design that we all remember today, with his extended side tanks and lower front running board, are all elements of an E2 class and credited to Reginald Payne. And the story that Thomas first appeared in is remembered well. Thomas was a station pilot at Vickerstown Station who grew bored of being stuck in the yard and tried to do several jobs. He tried to pull coaches and trucks, but they didn't go well until he proved himself when he saved an engine named James after he crashed. After that, Sir Topham Hatt gave Thomas his own branch line. Everything was organised in the books, counting his rivalry with Gordon and friendship with Edward. And the first one is showing who Thomas is and learn what he's about. He's cheeky, he's kind of rude and thinks he can get away with it. This introduced Thomas at his worst, and we laughed at him when he gets coupled up by Gordon. And the audience know what Thomas is and is about by the book's end. The second book clearly shows Thomas's main goal. Thomas often grumbled because he was not allowed to pull passenger trains, and the other engines laughed. "Rubbish," said Thomas crossly. "You just wait, I'll show you." Like he wants to leave the yard and pull coaches like the others. He gets his first chance when Henry was ill, but he failed by his own impatience. The audience laughed at Thomas's bad luck, as he's still unpracticed at this point. But for a long time afterwards, the other engines laughed at Thomas and said, "Oh, look, there's Thomas, who wanted to pull a train but forgot about the coaches." The third book shows him trying to do another job by pulling Edward's trucks, but he failed again. But really worse, and gets told sucked off by Sir Topham Hatt. Thomas has hit rock bottom and humans feel sympathy for him. Like, we understand he's not falling around. A human wants this and we want him to complete. And it arrives in the 4th book. It begins with Thomas minding his business in pleasure with Sir Topham Hatt until James zooms through the yard and crashes. Thomas finally proves himself when he saves poor James in desperate need. And for an award for his courage, Sir Topham Hatt gives him his own branch line. The story ends with Thomas in a distant place. Then where he began, he finally got what he wanted and grown as a character. A perfect way to end. The story's moral is what children do in real life, like, never give up on your goals, keep trying and you will achieve them. The timeless message is why the book is so victorious, and Thomas easily became the most popular character of the franchise. And we understand why. He's relatable to the audience, and children understand who the characters are, but they see themselves as Thomas. Children wanted to do great things, leave something boring, praised by the adults, and get an award for doing something brilliant and have an adventure. We see Thomas's life on the branch line and what things change for him. The book introduces coaches named Annie and Clarabelle. While they're old, Thomas loves them dearly and protective of them. Even Thomas has grown a bit, he's still the same cheeky engine. Getting a branch line made him quite cocky. Thomas the Tank Engine is very proud of his branch line. He thinks it is the most important part of the whole railway. And he's still impatient as when he left his guard behind. Like, how can I run my line properly if Henry's always late? He doesn't realise that Sir Topham Hatt depends on me. And when he first met Terence the Tractor, the words when he first spoke to him was an insult. "I'm Thomas, I'm pulling a train. What ugly wheels you've got." "Whoa, Thomas, okay, relax." And Bertie the Bus first appears, who shows to be a friendly rival to Thomas. And they have their iconic race to the end of the line. Over the years, the railway gained other engines, including Toby and Percy. While Wilbert was not big on changing details, this doesn't mean he wouldn't write new stories to change characters that were a point of disagreement. Wilbert never liked that irregular Thomas's running board was between the books. The real E2 classes have dips at the front and back, but Thomas lacked the back dip. That in Wilbert's eyes meant his front and back buffers were at different heights. So he did this story that Thomas crashed, and then rebuilt to adjust this issue. The famous book when Thomas tried to move himself without his driver and couldn't be able to stop and crashed into the station master's house. It's so well written that Wilbert wanted to change a detail that embodied Thomas and the real E2 class so perfect. Thomas did crash in the story just because his front to be rebuilt, and it happened in his way. He gets boastful from his driver's comments, like, "You know just where to stop, Thomas," laughed his driver. "You can almost manage without me." Thomas had become conceited. He didn't realise his driver was joking. Then he boasted to the others. "The driver says I don't need him now," he told the others, which makes him think he can drive by himself. And he tries to when no one is looking, and ends in a disaster, ending with Thomas learning his lesson. Wilbur is a genius like this. The book's popularity is real proof to his writing skills, and it's also Christopher's favourite story. It might be the most improved Thomas story, but Wilbur didn't change details to change them. He directed those changes in the world normally. When Thomas came back from Quevens Gate Works, he acquired a new look with flat running boards from back to front and it's still reliable to every book afterwards. After that, his major role in this book is when he becomes displeased after being sidelined on his own branch line, so the visitor engine named Stephanie can pass through. Well, after being talked up by Stephanie, he lays aside to be angry, like, "Oh well," said Thomas modestly. "Perhaps when you know the word as I do, I exactly put it in Stephanie. You're such an expert," Thomas flattered. Forgot he was cross and told Stephanie all about his branch line. It's not difficult to persuade Thomas of anything, just to be in his own ego and agree to whatever it is. After this book, Thomas stops being used, with a quick mention that Thomas hasn't appeared in 7 books until book 26. It might be that Wilbur got bored of Thomas and takes attention to the other characters like Edward, Gordon, James, Henry, Toby, Percy, and the narrow gauge engines. There's many stories that uses the same thing, like when Thomas gets cocky or mean to someone, disobeys someone, and gets his comeuppance. It shows that Thomas doesn't have a character arc, and maybe that's why Wilbur got bored of him. Thomas returned in Wilbert's last book, and it was because that some publishers and his wife Margaret Audrey convinced him to do one last story with Thomas in it. But he only appeared in 2 segments because Percy is the main focus. The final moment with Thomas in Wilbert's project was him teasing at Percy. Well, after the series finished, Thomas was still the most popular character and the mascot of the franchise, but not the main character of the Railway series. Until before the show started, Christopher took over after his father and continued the books. Some publishers want more Thomas stories, and he appeared loads of books by Christopher. The 16 stories that he did, 8 of them are the focus on Thomas. Christopher was allowed to do his own stories, but he reveals about the demands for Thomas to appear too much. In book 30, it shows the dynamic of Thomas and Percy. They start off rocky by arguing like this: "If you stop me from doing something nice, would you be the drip, Thomas?" "You're the drip," said Thomas crossly. And also, the first segment of the book shows Thomas and Percy fighting again over an accident with coal, until they finally dropped their beef and mended their friendship in the last segment, after Percy saves Thomas. "I'm sorry I was rude," said Thomas as Percy helped him back to the shed. "That tank of mine made turn me into a bigger drip than we expected, didn't it? Can we be friends again, please?" Percy was delighted to agree. It's perfect, and they felt a lot closer after the story. For Thomas in the Railway series, he doesn't have a character arc because when he first appeared, his arc was shown, but he still has the same attitude. But he is easy to understand when he's the same character. He's cheeky, boastful, impatient, thrill-seeking, and remorseful. Also friendly to his engines. Does a lot of hard work, doing what is right, and being a really useful engine. Thank you so much for watching. Well done to the Railway series, and I'll see you on part 2. Goodbye!